Jesus' teachings are guiding flame. Over all else, we stake our claim. Good morning, everyone. This is Doug. This is an episode where I'm going to redirect you or get you interested, hopefully, in watching a video on Jacob Berman's channel, History Valley. And you'll see the title there. I'll also put a link in the description below. The topic is Paul in the Clementine literature, Clementine Homilies, is linkable to Jewish Apostolic Christianity. So a window on the world of the early church would be to look at this particular work known as the Clementine Homilies, and that's what we'll discuss in this episode. I'm going to just give you a little taste of it now, and then I, again, will sign off before I send you on. Okay.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to another live stream on the History Valley podcast. And tonight I'm joined by Douglas Del Tondo from the Jesus Words Only YouTube channel. I have it tagged in the description below, and it will also be in the pinned comment just below that. We'll talk about the search for the historical Paul the Apostle in the Clementine Homilies. So Doug, thank you for joining me tonight.
My pleasure. Glad to be here.
So before we get started on the presentation, could you tell the audience what is the Clementine Homilies for those who have never heard it before?
All right. Well, it's a work that generally is regarded as having been last created in the 300s, 200s to 300s. But the question is it earlier in time? It purports to be a travelogue of Peter and his friend he met named Clement, who later becomes the Bishop of Rome. And Peter is chasing a guy named Simon Magus, and it's sort of a travelogue adventure story, and it's actually a very creative story, and it has two components to it, two ways it appears in history. And they sort of overlap, but they're not identical. One's called the Clementine Homilies, and the other's called the Clementine Recognitions. But the actual original, if you read Galatians 3:19, 4:6, and 4:9, Paul says the law, the Mosaic law, was ordained through angels to a mediator, Moses. And he goes on to call them weak and beggarly angels who control the elements. Now, it's usually just translated elements, but Marvin Vincent points out that that's a borrowing from the book of Jubilees, a non-canonical book Paul was relying upon. And in there, you have angels that control the elements. Now, the Bible never has angels controlling the wind, water, and fire, but that is in the book of Jubilees. But they're less powerful than God, and therefore there's no one element of, fire can defeat the element of water, right? So there's all this conflict going on. Well, that's what Paul is ascribing the Mosaic law to. It wasn't given by God. It was given by weak and beggarly angels who control the elements. And Paul is angry with the Galatians for calling them fools for observing days like the Sabbath and the seasons and holy days. So you can see again, Paul's Galatians passages really tie in with 2 Peter 2. So that's definitely a first century event. I mean, Galatians is something Paul likely wrote, or at least that's what most people believe, or many people believe. And you have a clear insult on the celestial beings, the slandering of the celestial beings. In fact, this is considered an insult on God's law and on God himself. So this is a really far over the top statement by Paul, and he's getting a proper response from Peter over here. So you can even see the conflict, the chasing, the same thing that you see in the Clementine Homilies and Recognitions, that Peter is always having to correct Paul. But he does it in a nice way, and you'll see why. And now we're going to get to what the scholarship will tell you about the homilies themselves, okay? And over here are the citations at the bottom in this passage. So there's a textbook, or a volume that can be treated as a textbook, called the New Testament Apocrypha. It's volume 2, and it talks about, there's two category verses you want to look at to see why you can find anti-Pauline remarks. And one of them is the issue of lawfulness, teaching against the law or not. And the other we'll discuss later. And so we'll still focus on this first one. So what this scholar says is Peter's lawful proclamation of the true prophet is an anti-Paulinism. Okay, so he says this here. So that's in page 490. Okay, now what is this issue about the true prophet? And it's another thing that's very archaic, meaning very early Christianity. And again, most Christians don't even know how ancient this is because it's right there in the book of Acts 3:23-24. Jesus called the prophet of Deuteronomy 18, who you must obey. It's not a believe in system. It's you have to obey him or you're going to be cut off from God's people. And so that's what's also in the passages, these passages here. These are the homilies. These are all cited here. I'm going to go through them or some of them today. So anyway, these are the passages that are focused upon in this particular section of that volume. And this is the emphasis on the lawful proclamation of the prophet and therefore law and this prophet. And so let me just read Acts 3:22-23 from the Net Bible so you understand why you can see how primitive the homilies are to talk about something that is virtually forgotten in Christianity after this point in time. I mean, the Catholic Church never picked up on this. Nobody virtually ever picked up on this, that Jesus was the prophet of Deuteronomy 18. And if you didn't know how that happened or when that happened, if you remember the Transfiguration, there's the Father speaks over Jesus' head and he says, listen to him. And that's the key passage in the verse involved in Deuteronomy 18. And the way this is translated here in the Net Bible is listen to him is obey him. And it's twice, just like it is twice in the Deuteronomy passage. And so it's just conveyed in Hebrew and in Greek and in Latin. The word here often connotes obedience or obeying. So let's listen to this again. Moses said, the Lord Yahweh, your God, will raise up for you a prophet like me from among your brothers. You must obey him in everything he tells you. Every person who does not obey that prophet will be destroyed and thus removed from the people. So this prophet God was promising to send and told Moses it's going to be a man like you, a human being, and I'm going to speak through him and I will expect people to listen to what he has to say. And if they don't, I'm going to cut them off from the people. So this is what Peter's talking over here about the lawful proclamation of the true prophet. This is the true prophet on the left. This is what it's there over the right. And it's another theme that's within the homilies that you don't see in many other places in early Christianity. So this is a very dovetail to the book of Acts by Luke. So again, this is where you can see early Christian evidence of connections, even though you are not, we're told it's all second, third century, the homilies, and then it appears to be, and that's not so. It seems to be, it's very archaic in that sense. Anyway, so here were all the citations I gleaned from the bottom here in homilies 2:15, 11:35, 36, and so on and so forth. So I pulled a few out to make points here for you so you can see this. Let's take a look at this one. Homily 2:15-17. And this I know, not as being a prophet, but as already seeing the beginning of this very evil. For some from among the Gentiles have rejected my legal preaching. Now, at this point, Peter is talking to James and they're having a conversation about, we need to protect these works from the corruption from these Gentiles who have these ideas that, you can just add and subtract words as you're writing and translating. No, we don't do that. We're strictly going to just never modify the words that are there. We're going to just copy them. And so they had a whole regime they were setting up in another letter separate from the homilies about how they were going to do that. So this is a reference back to that control system they intended to put in. By the way, that's another thing. It's like they haven't even written anything yet, but before they write it, they want to make a plan that nobody can corrupt it. And so that's this all makes sense. It makes sense of a very practical, realistic thing that would happen in the beginning of a group that hasn't written any gospels yet. Again, that it just it's has all the flavor of a first century early church time period.
All right, so I hope you'll be interested to go over to Jacob's channel, and I'll give you a link in the description below. And you'll be intrigued, I think, particularly how the early church dealt with the Acts 9 facts or evidence that they were aware of about Paul's experience on the road to Damascus and how they addressed what a true Christian should be evaluating when they're reading that material. All right, God bless. Take care. Ciao, bye.
From shadowed veils, the wolves arise, ravening hearts from Benjamin's guise. They twist the path with cunning deceit, but we retreat to the Savior's heartbeat.
His teachings blaze an unyielding fire, outshining lies that empires inspire. Jesus' teachings are guiding flame. Over all else we stake our claim. Leery of wolves in sheepskin hide, grace through obedience, faith as our guide. Jesus' words alone, the cause filled grace. No added scrolls, no veering creed. His gospel core is all we need. His teachings blaze an unyielding fire, outshining lies that empires inspire.